Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere. Learn more at heavenlyspirits.com.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with another episode of the In Focus podcast, brought to you by the South Coast Artists Index and generously supported by Heavenly Spirits Imports. Today, we have a return guest who is going to tell us a little about where she is, where she's going, as compared to the last time that she was on the show. So this is her second time, I believe. And as I said, it's not a one and done. We don't do pages, we do chapters, we do volumes, we do complete sets. So that in mind, you know the routine. Introduce yourself, spell your name.
Sure. My name is Catherine Carter, and Catherine is Catherine, and Carter is Carter.
You have a lot going on in your life beside a new haircut and new glasses.
True. Very true.
So tell us about it. What was that?
I said there's always something going on.
Yeah, that's living, right?
Well, I'm a Gemini, so we're bored so fast. It's just most people are just getting into something and we're like next, so it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, it is. It is. It keeps you on your own toes, though.
True. That's true.
So, well, since the last time you were here, you opened your school.
Yes, that's right. Mm-hmm.
And how's that going? Where's that going? We'll take it from there.
Sure. Well, excuse me, I might have to pop a cola every once in a while here. The school's going very well. It's, I started in 2018 in just a very small rented space and, a couple students here and there, and it's really grown and it's really expanded. I started out teaching realistic drawing to young students. I think it was 10 to 13 in the first semester. And then I added adult classes. I added one-time workshops for adults. And the latest addition was last summer. I thought I would try adding full weeks as a summer sort of camp. You're not supposed to call it a camp because that implies that you have a nurse on staff and there's various state rules there. But it was a summer program, we'll say. And I thought, well, I'll try this for 3 weeks. And every week filled. I had a maximum 8 students per class, and every single week sold out. So it was very popular. So going very well, and being the true Gemini that I am. Now that I'm a success, I'm ready to try something else. So we're gonna switch it up a little bit, but basically going very well.
Okay. Now, I've described you and several other women artists in the area as the hardest working artists. It's actually, I think I even wrote an article about you guys.
Mm-hmm.
But what is that drive? I mean, beside being a bored Gemini.
I feel as though I have been greatly blessed by an ability to really pick up just about any drawing or painting material and work in a number of different styles with ease. I mean, I have to practice like anybody practices anything, but I really have just a natural skill at being able to do these things and being able to translate what I'm feeling and seeing through my eye and into my hand and onto the brush and the page of the canvas. But I'm also very good at teaching other people in a very step-by-step clear way. And that combined with, I think I picked up from my parents, both of them were very kind, nurturing, warm, encouraging people. So between my ability to explain things very clearly and my ability to just be kind of encouraging and like a cheerleader and get people to at least try it. I'm a really good teacher, and I consider these to be great blessings that I realize not everyone has. And it really means a lot to me to kind of be able to share this with those who, are sort of sensing their creative roots, but aren't sure where to start. I think a lot of people are very intimidated when it comes to, creating something visually. And so I just feel that this is it's a blessing that I love to share. I just absolutely love to share.
I remember my first adult class that I taught, I think it was at Artworks years ago.
Mhm.
No, actually for the South Coast Learning Network.
Mhm.
Sandria Parsons,
Oh yeah, I remember
right,
that
yeah.
really nicely.
And with Christina Contley was running the organizational aspect of it. And I was like, okay, this is going to be different. I never realized that it was going to be as emotional as it was, because there were people there, some my age, some a few a bit younger at the at the time, so about 20 years ago, and then many of them older than me, and um, it was almost and I'm using the term very loosely, an art therapy session, because they were going back to something that they were shooed away from,
Yes.
or something that they were curious about but never encouraged to pursue. I mean, it was like a clinic for birds with broken wings. It was the most
Yes, I understand what you mean. Mhm.
uh emotional thing I've ever had to deal with. And I thought to myself, it's art. How could it hurt anybody?
Mhm.
But I found that, probably in their day and age, or the area where they were growing up, that the art teachers weren't as fortunate to have the art teachers that I had.
Well, there were nuns wielding rulers, and there were, parents saying, "Oh, I don't know, it doesn't look like a cow or a horse or a dog to me," and
Right.
we're so fragile that just one little kick like that, and you're just like, okay, I'm not going to put my hand on that stove again.
Yeah. How do you expect to make a living doing that?
Well, that's a whole nother story. Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's not unrealistic if you don't know the art world, but things are totally changed. You can definitely make a living doing this. No question about it.
Yeah. There's a word, a phrase that was never used when I was coming up to use that term: art business.
Mhm, mhm.
And if it was used, it pretty much was in the bailiwick of gallerists and people who sold art, but
Yes.
not for the artists themselves. Please tell us about how teaching art, being an art instructor, balances with your practice as an artist, primarily a painter, correct?
Yes, primarily a painter. Well, I also teach at the college level, and I don't feel that you can instruct artists or up and coming artists, people, young adults who have selected this as their career, unless you have done so yourself. So it really means a lot to me to be able to say, this is what really kind of works out in the world, or this is, being able to lead by example instead of just sort of surmising about what's going on out there.
Hmm. Hmm. Or being a successful artist because of timing. Um, the concept of luck has really nothing to do with it. I think it was Lao Tzu that said success has nothing to do with luck, but has everything to do with timing. Um, so when
Yeah,
you come into
success.
something,
Mhm.
that opportunity knocks. I mean, the train only comes to the station that one time or whatever, and you
Yeah,
have to jump on it.
your success is completely subjective as well. So, you know,
How did you get into the teaching portion of this?
I just loved painting and drawing so much that I went on to get a master's degree, not really thinking, oh, wow, once I do this, I can teach at the college level. And so I received a bachelor's degree and then a master's degree in painting from UMass Dartmouth, which um, qualifies you to teach at the college level yourself. Luckily for me, because I never would have made it through anything theoretical, but you have that opportunity without having to have taken art education courses or kind of how to teach type of courses. It wouldn't have interested me one bit. If you're a decent human being and a compassionate human being and you know what you're doing, you can be a good teacher. So
Yeah, I remember because my parents were worried about how you're going to make a living. They were supportive of me being an artist. I mean, I've pretty much been that all of my life. But then when the rubber was going to hit the road, they're like, so how is this going to work? So I decided I was going to transfer from the painting curricula to the art education. And Alma Cummings' dad, Herb Cummings, said, "Oh no, please don't do that."
oh, God bless him. God bless him.
He said, "Please don't do that." And at the time, there was a lot of swirl. There's no other word that I can think of better. There's a lot of swirl going on. And I also think, that one department was a little bit entrenched against another department. And he basically said, I guess it's safe to say all these years after that, and I'll follow that up. He said that that's where all the people who can't draw and paint go, to teach other people how to draw and paint. And I said, that's kind of a harsh thing. But when I went into the curriculum, I don't think it was because he had anything to do with it, but I was a little miserable because there was just a lot of, I don't know, feely-mealy. It just wasn't my thing. So I jumped back. And I had that attitude until a friend of mine, he was a year behind me in graduate school in Miami. He married one of his students, Lourdes Fuller, and she was an art instructor. In fact, she was the president of the Miami Dade Art Educators Association. And I went down there to do a workshop for them. And I already had that chip on my shoulder kind of thing about, the whole art curriculum. And then I remember after graduate school, the itinerant art teachers, or the bag ladies as they were called, because they had shopping carts, and it was so sad. There was no art room anymore. There was no on-campus instructor. Art was dispensable. So that added to the whole vibe. And I walked into her classroom in Miami. I think it was in South Miami. I think it's Sheridan Junior High, or Sheridan Middle School. And the moment I walked in the door, I didn't even get to her classroom, my jaw dropped. I was like, oh my gosh. And it really rekindled or reinstated my feelings about art instructors. And there has been a massive change in all of those years, in those 50 years.
Yeah, and I don't mean to put down anyone who has anything to do with the arts. I mean,
Right.
To go into art education, I think you have to be a very generous person and have a good heart and want to help your fellow human being. I'm just saying, for me, it's hands-on excites me, reading about how to set up a syllabus or something. I mean, that would just bore me. But I do not at all mean to put down someone who has selected art education as a major. I don't believe that necessarily means, oh well, those who can't teach. I don't believe that at all.
Right. But there's also that other aspect too, that the junior high. I mean, I was a substitute teacher in the junior high level. Oh my God, if there was a parallel hell, that was it. So there's a challenge already from the moment you walk in the door. But now you're teaching an age group that's what you say, 8 to 13?
Yeah, it's younger kids, but I also have to say that I am, it's a milestone in my life. I'm about to turn 60 next year, and I'm going to turn 60. And I have spent more than the past decade, but mostly the past decade of my life focused upon teaching. And I won't say that my painting career has floundered, because it hasn't, but it hasn't been as intense as I want it to and think it could be. So I've decided that I'm going to have my school go on hiatus. I'm going to cut down my college teaching to some degree, and I'm really going to focus on, getting back to that true creative spirit. It's just you and the paint and the canvas, and really just kind of pushing my own creativity as much as I can for, well, we'll see how the decade rolls, but I'm kind of thinking for the next 10 years.
But you know as well as I know that there's a lot more to, I tell, my wife, I tell Paula, I said, at one time studio time meant easel time. Then I realized, and then she said something, because she always says these things that finally, it's like, it's like a gentle smack, she said something and I was like, oh, wow, there's studio time, which is all the marketing, all the social media, all the, applying for grants, all of this, the business side of things. And then there's the actual easel time. And the frustration is to try to, at one point, a few years back, we used to joke, a bunch of us painters, the BFA class of 75 from SMU, from Southeastern Massachusetts University, used to laugh about, oh, it's 50-50, 50% of the time we spent painting and 50% of the time we spent marketing ourselves. Now it's probably like 85-15. And there goes weeks and months without painting. And it gets really, what's the word? Frustrating.
Well,
very, very
when
frustrating.
you add teaching to that, and by the way, I love all of those things. I love the marketing, I love the creating, and I love the teaching. But I just been dividing myself too many ways. I just read a wonderful book called The One Thing. It's called The One Thing. And it's sort of a self-help book from maybe a couple years back. It was a bestseller, but the author's thesis is that if you keep dividing yourself, you're kind of never going to get anywhere in any direction. So he recommends you just keep cutting it down. Okay, I've got 5 things that really mean a lot to me. No, you pick the one. What is the one next step you can take to help you with that one thing? And I realize, again, it's partly because I'm just interested in so many things and I have so much energy that I've just been going in 1,000 different directions. And plus, everyone has a family, you have your friends, you're trying to be a human being, you're trying to have a clean house, all by the time all these things happen, you just can barely crawl to bed and go to sleep. So you have to really focus. And again, I've really been focused on the teaching, and I really now want to focus on the creating and the marketing that does, you're absolutely right, that does come from that.
I mean, I've mentioned it several times because it's something I'm still battling with. And the reason why I'm bringing it back up is because I was on a Zoom meeting, the Detroit Fine Arts Breakfast Club. And one of the curators from the Swords to Plowshares Peace Center Gallery in Detroit was talking about being sustained by her artwork. And it was like one of those moments. And I'm one of those people, I would like to think that I can wrap my head around something very difficult very quickly and understand it faster than a lot of people. But the simplest things take me forever. I'm just an adult when it comes to it. I have to repeat the same process 1,500 times. And then that one moment go, oh my God, it was this easy. Because I overcomplicate the simple.
Right. Well,
so this one thing makes a lot of sense. So Paula has always been saying, okay, you really have 2 choices, because she's very pragmatic. Do you want to be sustained by your art, or do you want to be supported by it? And I felt like, a line from Oliver, may I have both, please? And well, this woman, Carol Cook Reed, said, I choose wanting to be sustained by my art, because without it, I'm nothing. Without it, what's the use? What's the purpose? And if I get success, success means recognition and sales, or sales and recognition, then that's great. But I served myself first, my soul first. And that's when it hit me, because I remember telling my grandchildren about, clinging on to something. It's like grabbing a handful of sand. In fact, I told them both when we were at the beach, grab a handful of sand, and I want you to hold on to it as tight as you possibly can, and grab all, keep every every bit of sand. And they would say, but Pepe, all the sand's coming out from between my fingers. I said, yeah, that's the entire point. If you relax your hand, most of that sand will stay in your hand.
Good point.
Yeah. So you're going to
pick.
What's that?
I don't think you have to pick. I think you can serve yourself and support yourself. I truly believe that.
I don't, yeah, I and that's when I realized I don't think it was a choice, but it was the point of view. Same house, different window, kind of thing. And by deciding, okay, it is about sustaining myself. So once I do that, then if I'm true to myself, if it's being reflected in my work, then people will see that in my work. And if they want to buy it, that's great. But the goal is not to sell because, we all know of someone, or we all have done it at some point in time where we created work for market, bread and butter work. We did it because, well, it keeps the food on the table, but you know what? It's a chore, and well, at least I'm painting, but it's like, yeah, but that's an excuse, not a reason. At least you're painting. It's not all that good. So I heard there's something else is going on as well, with your career, that is helping you make this decision. Am I correct? Are you free to speak about that?
I'm not sure. What do you mean?
I think you were either approached or connected with a consultant.
Oh,
An art
absolutely.
consultant?
Yes.
Okay.
And and I have to say, I don't think this kind of thing happens overnight. I mean, I've been very fortunate 3 times in my life. The perfect representative for my work has just kind of appeared. Ironically, usually after like months or years of contacting people who weren't quite right, I gave up, and then someone like dropped into my lap. So kind of keeps happening to me. I gotta let go more often. But anyway, yes, I have just become represented by a wonderful art consultant in Wellesley, and the style of art that she represents, I didn't have to like alter anything or try and make something to fit. It was just the perfect fit for the type of work that she sells. And yes, so I feel, again, very fortunate to have encountered this person. So yep.
So the timing was obviously just right. What does this person do? I mean, because obviously and we all have, unfortunately, we all have to have an income of some sort. The revenue stream created by your school, it has oh my goodness, has to be replaced by another form of income.
Well, and I'm determined to make that happen. I really am. I see other artists, everyone talks about how horrible Instagram is and it takes you away from reality and all these things. But to me, Instagram enables you to follow and observe and learn from people whom you would have never even heard of, never mind been able to see how they do whatever it is they do. And there are lots of artists who market themselves beautifully, sell their work very well on not just a livable salary, but very healthy salary. Thank you very much. And if they can do it, I can do it. I have not put my mind to it this direction with this much faith before in my life, because now I see other people who are doing it. And with all due respect, they're not any more intelligent or resourceful or talented than I am. They've just applied themselves with real faith that they're going to find this venue. And, there's the art world, I realized from being on Instagram, the national, we'll say the United States gallery scene is very small. And say the top, 50 or so galleries, they all show the same artists. So I'm not saying this is going to happen to me overnight, but I certainly believe that, again, you can check in with me in, we'll say, 5 years, but I really feel as though I can be much farther along on that pathway than I am right now.
Okay. Your whole career has been not textbook, that's for sure.
That's true.
Although, as a former fashion designer, I can say, because of knowing you, when I bump into other fashion designers, I always ask them about their backgrounds, education, so on and so forth. And it's amazing. It's almost like a template where very few remain in fashion. The friends of ours, she was in Japan for 4 years. I mean, that was her passion. She loved Japan. It just wasn't happening. And she decided to go into nursing. And that's just one of several stories that I've heard. But nothing we do nothing we learn is ever wasted, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
So
And I have to say,
what did you learn from fashion design and this shifting gears? My goodness, how did that all bring you to this point?
well, I have to say a lot of the reason I left the fashion industry was I didn't understand how to manage money. I wasn't willing to move to New York City or to a large international like London or somewhere like that.
Mhm.
And I am the worst seamstress in the world. I mean, every time I go to like even sew on a button or something, I think about what you said last time we spoke about your mom and how she, you know, moved to New York City without a lot of support and just walked into a designer
Mhm.
office and they just said, you're hired right now. And I always think, oh God, Mrs. Fortier would look at look at my sewing project and like cry or something because
Well,
I'm really bad at sewing.
yeah, she spent her career tearing apart other people's work. I don't mean verbally, I mean, manually, and putting it back together, and also altering production process by saying, no, 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 no. If you want to make more than one jacket an hour, this is how you have to do it. And it was with a great sense of pride and skill. I guess she's a great puzzle maker. I didn't inherit that at all. I can't stand making puzzles, but I do enjoy untangling string and yarn.
Mhm.
I don't know.
I love both of those things like a lot. Like I
Really?
work in the jewelry department.
Yeah.
I used to love it when somebody would say, "Oh, someone just threw all these necklaces in a bag and we can't." And I'd be like, "I'll do it. I'll do it." I love doing it.
Really, you too?
I don't know what it is. I
Well,
mean,
you have to see how it became tangled
yeah.
in order to untangle it. That's how
Yeah.
I look at it. So it's sort of like this weird little, if you had a little camera, like what was that show with Raquel Welch that they had years ago where they shrunk them all down? They were like,
Oh, yeah.
it's like a medical show with miniature people in your body or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
It was, but that kind of thing where you have to get down to that micro level and learn how to follow the tangle, so to speak. This art consultation, a lot of people don't really know what that is. They think that it probably is like a form of therapy or a bunch of other things. But what is it? If you could describe that.
Oh, you mean what an art consultant does?
Yes.
Well, there's some differentiation, not a lot these days, but there are art galleries that represent you and sell your work as an artist and
Mhm.
consultants as well. And galleries tend to be still brick and mortar, but consultants really are sort of they make their living out of the trunk of their car and they have physical artwork. Sometimes they do it online, obviously, with COVID and stuff. But the person that I work with in particular just has her car is full of art, and she's always driving to the homes of people who want to redecorate their homes, the art on the wall in their homes. She also specializes in both kind of moving what they have at home to different locations and then perhaps adding a new painting or pairing something they already owned with something new, and also commissions too. So if someone says, well, I really love this painting, but I have the space I want to fill is a little bit smaller. Could they make the same thing but in this particular dimension? Absolutely. So that's a little bit different from a gallery where they certainly do work with residential clients and, do commissions and so forth from galleries. But the consultant tends to be sort of a, we'll come to your home kind of a.
So they work with architects, interior designers.
Yes.
So sometimes they're probably even like headhunters for galleries. The gallery might say, "Hey, do you know of anybody?" Blah, 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 blah.
It's all interactive, and tends to be regional. But like I said, a lot of this is, it's the same artists over and over again. I see as I do research. So, but yeah, so there's a little bit of a difference between galleries and consultants.
Wow. Now, how the time that you spent focusing on your art school, how did that affect your practice, your painting, positively, negatively, neutrally?
Well, it's like a different world in a way. I mean, it's it did take literal time away, and that's one of the things I'm going to have to do over the next year before I can really start to approach a national reach with my paintings. And that's I just need to sit there and make inventory. I just need more paintings to physically send to people. So having my school and essentially it was like running my own small business. We took time away from creation, but it's so creative, thinking of who my students are, what materials I have, what sorts of projects I want us to do, what they need to learn and how I can teach it to them is very, very, very creative. So I think like the creative juices, it's like a muscle, and it's not like, well, I burnt out all my creativity on my teaching and I have nothing left. No, I think it's the opposite. I think it all kind of stirs up, coming up with the projects and working, making projects with even children. It's so creative. It's so much fun. It's just so joyful that carries over into the pure studio experience.
I can imagine at that age group too, that sometimes they teach you something.
Oh,
I talked about how I'm slow at simple things, where you've been doing something with a specific mindset, and now the child does something, and you go, "Oh my God, this is brilliant," because I couldn't figure it out. I just saw it happen right in front of my eyes.
Oh, it happens every week. And I try to do that on purpose too with the projects. I try to say, okay, here's our inspiration, but now you can decide, what color you want to put in the background and what 3 objects you want to pick out of the 10 that I have here, something like that. They put in, even the youngest ones, like the 10-year-olds, they still get to pick in their own little, their own voice starts to come through. That's the way I design the projects.
I just realized something. Are they different? I mean, I see my great grandson already with his mom and dad, the iPad or cell phone when he was smaller, because it was easier to grip. And they're bing, bing, bing. I mean, it's like with no instruction. So it's a very visual world. And you see these young, untrained people. Some of them have minimal, if any, art education training, through elementary or secondary school. And we're talking, and I don't like the word talent, but with this jaw-dropping ability.
See, I think everyone has got that to some degree somewhere inside of them. Yes, there are definitely, people who have a more natural hand-eye coordination, or they're a little more in touch with like kind of crazy ideas in their head and they're a little comfortable expressing them. But it's a basic human desire and ability to think of something in your head, visual and verbal too, but we're talking about art. Picture something in your head and figure out how to hold a pencil or hold a brush and make it come out on the canvas. And that's why it's heartbreaking to hear people say, like adult students go, well, I signed up for this class, but I'm not really creative. So, and it's sort of like, oh, yes, you are, yes, you are.
They're already undermining themselves before they've even begun the adventure.
Yep.
Wow. I mean, if you go back 10,000 years to the Neolithic age, and you look at the cave paintings, there's the 3 stages. that go, from the Neolithic to the Paleo, if I remember right, because it's been a while since I taught art history, Neolithic, Mesolithic, Paleolithic. People always get, if you would put the cave paintings, drawings, the cave art up, in groups side by side and say, okay, which came first? They always choose the crudest of the three, which is the most evolved, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And the most exquisite is the oldest work. I mean,
Well,
some of
sure,
the
obviously,
bison, they look like Korean, some of the Korean ink drawings. It's like, oh my God, a line to cry over.
Yeah, and obviously we don't know for sure, but I'd be willing to bet that none of those cave painters had someone come up to them and say, you really can't draw a bison. I think you should just give it up. No, it's like it's in everybody. Again, some people are born with talent, I think, but it's a skill like anything else that can be developed, and it's and I always remember this at the end of every semester. I try not to cry because I don't want to look like an idiot, but when my college students, I often have non-majors, they put up their whole portfolio from the first day against the wall. And I say to them, now on the first day of class back in September, could you have imagined that you did the last couple paintings or drawings? And they're just like, their jaws drop when they see it on there. Like, I would have never imagined I could have done that. And I think to myself, it was in there. Luckily they took this class for whatever reason, but it was in there the whole time.
Yeah, I used to keep their first drawings, and then bring it out for the portfolio review, and that's when you could hear the jaws hitting the floor.
Right.
Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. It's like, what's to be embarrassed? Look at your trajectory. Look at the arc that you've created. Alma's dad he was a very interesting man, but I remember he would let us go the first drawing session 2 hours. So, a lot of us probably never had to draw for that long a time ever, especially like in high school or whatever. And he's like, okay, everybody gather in a circle. I want you to take your drawings, and I want you to hold them so that they face the inside of the circle where I am. And it's like, okay, I want you to put hold them, hold it with your hands close, touching each other, and then I want you to tear them up. And everybody would freeze. And he would wait for the response, and it was like dead silence in the room. And then he started laughing in his unequivocal way. Plus, he had a very distinctive laugh. And he said, the lesson here, folks, is about preciousness. Okay, you spent 2 hours trying to make preciousness. And then he said, what is the hardest part? Because you never knew where he was going to come from with his analogies. And I loved it because I could understand that. My mind worked the same way. And he said, what's the hardest part about potty training a baby, a child? And everybody's like, oh, getting them to sit. Everybody had an answer. And he's like, no, getting them to flush. And then everybody's like, what? And he said, that's a part of them that you're telling them to throw away, just like I told you to rip up your drawings.
Wow, I see why you see that coming.
Yeah, I think some people think we received a very warped education, but it was very, very practical in the long run. So to juxtapose 10,000 years artisan caves to 8 to 13-year-olds, it's interesting because as speech, I guess, was developed, the drawing skills didn't have to be as acute as they were. But now on the other end, we have these children who grow up in a visual world. It's a world of screens.
Yeah.
How does that affect them positively or negatively?
Well, I'm currently teaching a studio art course at LaSalle University for graphic design majors, and none of them know how to draw. Like, they don't know how to draw at all. They can do anything. They could create any image you ask, from software, from Photoshop or whatever. But they don't know how to draw. And I was shocked. Last night, I gave them a portrait workshop. And it wasn't, it was no pressure. It was only the face from the front. We just put the guidelines in the eyes and it's just like a generic head so that they would know where to put everything. And they were freaking out. And these are guys they're freshmen. So they're, 18, 19, 20 years old, but it was really a struggle for them. And their drawings were very childlike and they were really nervous. Is this okay? What's wrong with this? And I thought, wow, so yes, that it's wonderful to be so facile with the various technology that's available these days, but obviously basic drawing subjects isn't covered in school.
Yeah. My wife was an instructor at the Henry Ford Community College in Detroit, Dearborn, I think. And she that's something that she's carried on. She said she insisted that they all, in fact, she has these little sketchbooks that she's a phenomenal surface artist and graphic artist, but she's constantly doing sketches because there has to be this hand to mind connection. You can't rely on the technology. Having exquisite color sense, which she does, is only going to carry somebody, so far. But without the mechanics, you don't know anything about composition or any of those things. So that's interesting. You in the community now, that's another question. You in the community, how do you think you have contributed to the creative community, and what do you believe you've received from the creative community?
Well, I like to think I've given all of the students that I have worked with some sense of not only their own creative direction, but just that sense of pride that we were talking about, as far as, wow, I didn't think I could do that. I mean, I have right here, I'm gonna keep it on my desk. I just got this card from a student it's a thank you note basically from a student who took a workshop of mine a couple of weeks ago. And, I really needed, you help with my creativity and blah, blah. So, I really like to feel as though I have good feedback from the students. But what they've given me is just such, I feel honored that people, whenever a new parent signs their child up for one of my classes, or, I had some new people take workshops this fall. I feel honored that people, trust me enough with that vulnerability where it's like, I don't know how to use colored pencils. I have no idea. It's a big deal that you kind of ask for help in that way, or entrust your creative spirit with somebody else. And that's a real honor. So it isn't just like, my small business isn't like your average small business where you walk into you order a shirt online or something like that. I mean, this is a real, and it's not like a service where you're, helping someone clean their closet or something like that. It's really, this person is like very, very vulnerable under your tutelage. And so
it's a combination of psychotherapy and spiritual support.
It really is. Yeah.
I remember the first time it happened, it was like, wow, I could go right now. I would be happy because I hit, I think, the highest high I could ever hit. And it's what I call the spark.
Yes.
And I had a technique, a teaching technique. I called it the 7 T's. I won't bore you with that, but and I one of them was, okay, you really do have to listen, okay, but I don't want you to think. I just want you to trust. So that's 2 of the 7 T's, but you have to trust me and you have to let go.
Yes.
Because I believe I can bring you to a place you've never been brought before. And I remember at CCRI when it happened, it was a boyfriend, girlfriend. They had their easels next to each other, and he was really rolling over her. But he had this, he's probably like the best in his high school class, and she was struggling like crazy. And he tended to poo-poo everything I said, and she was listening intently, and almost grabbing that handful of sand too tightly. And then all of a sudden, she turned around and looked at me, and I swear I saw this spark, bang, in her eyes, like an awakening. And I still have the drawing that she did. It was the most exquisite thing. And I looked at her, and he was a little rattled by the whole thing, not very complimentary. And I said to her, "What happened?" She said, "I just listened to what you said. And all of a sudden, I felt what you said." And she turned out to be the best in the class. And she tried to cheerlead everybody else on to just let it go. So is it teaching skill or whatever? I don't know. It's an honor, as you said. It really isn't this incredible honor, because it's a gift
Yes.
that you can't wrap, you can't buy, you can't put in a jar. It's incredible. What is the community given to you? I mean, and let's we all refer to the creative community in South Coast, Massachusetts. We have more artists than Cardis. No pun intended. Cardis has little liver pills. I think they're actually still in production, believe it or not. I think I actually saw them someplace. But everybody's scrambling to support themselves, to make a living, to feel sustained, and so on and so forth. But as a whole, is there really a community, or are we just a bunch of people that all show up at the same openings at this, every single time there's an opening? I mean, does it go beyond that?
It's hard to say. If you had asked me this before COVID, I think I would have had a more sure-footed answer, but I'm really not sure. I think we're still, obviously we're still under pandemic conditions. I think it's still, we're sort of redefining ourselves as the South Coast artist community. So I don't really have an answer to that.
I mean, that was going to be my follow-up. How did COVID or the pandemic affect the community at large, and you in particular?
Well, I had extra time. I didn't have to commute to things, and I really enjoyed. I had a great time during the pandemic. I was very, very productive, let's say. But I think as far as the community, people are starting to, open studios and things are starting to happen again, but it's not the same, and I'm just not sure how it's.
You can't quite put your finger on what that not the sameness is.
It's just starting to, people just starting to feel safe. Yeah, so I'm not sure who's done what. I mean, I'm a tenant at Hatch Street Studios in the North End in Bedford, and everything changed. I was lucky in that I was able to move to Zoom, but there was a circus arts school there that had to close because you can't spot somebody and close to them with COVID. There was a music school, Jeff Angeli in South Coast Lessons. He had to close his physical school, and he's starting to rebuild and offer classes from his home and so forth. So we're all kind of finding our way, and there are a lot of new tenants in the building, in other words, that I'm just getting to know. So I can't even say at this point who's still there and what they're still doing. We all adjusted as best we could depending on our business, how we had contact with the public. So it's still in flux.
Some have been affected negatively, some obviously positively in ways, totally unexpected ways, and others have been presented with opportunities they would have never have thought of or even written into their business plan.
Yes, just to give you an idea, actually one thing I did as far as a personal career thing was I hired an art career consultant in, I think it was March or so, who was phenomenally helpful and very, very inspiring. But I asked her, how has COVID affected the gallery scene? She's in San Diego, so it isn't just New England. And she said the galleries that she is familiar with and in contact with, she has a real network, a national network. She said some of them, it's been COVID was a terrible time for them, and they, cut way down, and they might even have to close. And she said other galleries who were able to adapt to more of an online format and, different forms of marketing and so forth, it's the best year they ever had was 2020. So as you say, it really helped some people if they could roll with the punches and readjust and redefine themselves. But those who tried to stick to the old methods just, might have shuttered.
There was some phenomena where artists who were underrepresented or not represented at all of a sudden were getting calls or emails or texts asking, for people to purchase their work or commission work from them. And artists who were well established, who were well represented, all of a sudden are going, "This is the worst year I've ever had in my life." Because I guess their pipeline was the gallery being shut down or working on half time. So a lot of things. So it's, in chaos, there is opportunity. And basically, I think that might be even your logo, your slogan, because of the changes that you've made, how you've evolved, and it's survival of the fittest, evolving is obviously key.
Right.
We're going to be wrapping this up. I usually, ask some very, very deep question. But this time, I was just going to give you, what would you like to say as you sign off about where you've come up to this point?
I would just like to say to folks who are listening, whether they're artists or non-artists, that a lot of what you are able to accomplish in life, it comes from what you believe you can accomplish. And so to think the most of yourself and expect the best of yourself and expect the best of others, and you really can achieve far more than you thought you could. So I may work hard. I may have a ton of energy, but I really believe I can do all these things. I don't have the slightest doubt I can do all these things. I just have to get the ball rolling now, new year and so forth. But anything is possible if you believe it's possible.
Yeah, it's the mindset. That's for sure. That's for sure. And also the point of view, which the lesson I learned last night about, yes, I've got two elements, but how I was looking at it is completely wrong. So that makes a big, big difference. Well, Catherine, great success. I hope it's coming your way with this consultant being out there rooting for you. And I want to thank you for the being a guest. And from this, I'll prepare my notes and write that article about you, which is going to be cool. It's a twofer. I think it's the first twofer I've ever had on the Artist Index. Sometimes after the fact, but not at the same time. So with that in mind, folks, thank you so much. Thank you for listening in and hearing Catherine Carter relate her journey of her practice and her career and her business. And with that in mind, thank you very much for joining us. Once again, this is the In Focus podcast brought to you by the South Coast Artist Index and generously supported by Heavenly Spirit Importers. And from that, be kind to each other, keep your head up, smile, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. The South Coast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere. Learn more at heavenlyspirits.com. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Be the artist you believe you are, and let's take care of each other out there.